Hello, we are live this evening with Living with Annietude, Conversations with Michael Paterano. How are you this evening, sir?
I am pretty good today. Not too bad
Pretty
so
good.
far. Yeah.
That's awesome. What is going on? How are things over there in what I call Saturn,
Oh, it's paradise.
isn't it?
It's a step up from hell, maybe
Yeah.
depending on the day.
Tonight might have been hell, knowing the conversations that you just had to have, but it might have been in a little bit of hell. So this evening, we were going to discuss something that does not come easy to either of us, which is self-compassion.
Yes.
So if you wouldn't mind giving me a little definition of what you feel self-compassion actually is, because I think it's important to define first and foremost, and then we can get into how neither of us have any, and how it's a work in progress to ever know.
um, Self-compassion is forgiving yourself, letting stuff go, letting yourself slide on certain things, acknowledging the fact that you can make a mistake and just accepting it, right? And not dwelling on it, holding on to it, twisting it, creating narratives around it, and just almost losing your mind over it, right? Because that's my pattern, right? Like I make a mistake. Yeah, I know.
We're doing definitions first.
But to me, that's what it is, right? It's cutting yourself slack, having grace with yourself. I mean, depending on what religion, you can name it all different things, right? I feel like it's self-love. It's finding your worth, valuing yourself, cutting yourself slack, and giving yourself that compassion. I mean, just having compassion and for yourself, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm very good at doing it for others. Myself is a whole different other ordeal.
That's the whole key too. I think that you nailed it. I mean, as far as the definition goes, it's sort of, in my mind, treating yourself like you would treat your friend. So, how I would respond to you or how I would respond to someone close to me is quite different than how I respond to myself on a pretty much daily basis. So self-compassion is such a work in progress and such an important part of life. And I think that sometimes people feel that it is like a weakness, like you're babying yourself or you are letting yourself off the hook is a good way to put it. When in fact, it's not really doing that. I feel that it's not letting yourself off the hook. In my life, I feel that self-compassion is when I have an understanding and empathy toward myself and my actions and my feelings. Because when I disregard my feelings, that's when I think that I lack that compassion that you should have for yourself. So, and I didn't mean to sort of make it about me when we were just defining it, but what were you going to say before about your, I didn't even give an example. So that's good. What were you going to say about your, it being your,
well, okay. So we've gone over many times that my self-worth has always been very minimal. It's been lacking. I don't value myself in many ways. And it's something that I'm really striving for and really working on. So if I don't have my self-worth and I don't value myself, then how can I forgive myself? Right. So I feel like that's the stem of self-compassion is you need to value yourself to be able to forgive yourself. Because if you don't value yourself, then it's impossible to forgive any of your own actions. So my habits always have been to fixate on things. And then, like we talked about a couple of weeks ago, creating those narratives around that. And then it just starts spinning, right? And I get very fixated. I hold it against myself. I start beating myself up over it. That's my habit. That is a habit that I've had my whole life.
What are some of the things that you say to yourself?
I'm an idiot. I messed up. I screwed up. It depends on the circumstance, right? Like, I get in my feelings, right? And then I just start spewing feelings all over the place. And and when I do that, and then I double step and second step, and I can't get out of my own way when I start trend. And it's like this regurgitation of whatever's running through my head at that moment. And it's extremely unfair to whoever's on the other side. But
Especially
then,
yourself, if
well,
yourself
right, but
side.
well, that's the other thing, right? Like once I do that, or once I have done that, then I start getting mad at myself and I start beating myself down and saying, oh, I'm not worth it. I'm not this. I'm not that. It's definitely me. I've made these mistakes. I can't do this. I can't do that. And it just spirals. It hits this complete downward spiral. And whatever progress I'm making, whatever work I'm doing just starts disappearing in an instant,
In
right?
your mind. In your mind.
In my mind, right? And it's easy to get sucked into that. And for me, right? Like that's my habit, so it's easy. Now I'm working on breaking those habits. That's not as easy, but I'm working on it.
So what do you think and I'm going to use my example because I think it will show you what I'm talking about, but I don't know how to ask the question exactly. But my lack of self-compassion is rooted in anxiety. So it starts as this feeling right here, and I get annoyed with myself and aggravated with myself, and then I start the negative self-talk and that narrative of, you can never do this. You're never going to be able to. What's the answer? Why can't you find it? Where is it? Why are you never able to do this correctly? And then the anxiety builds and I find myself in that cycle. And then it can be broken, but it's hard to break myself. Usually it's help from someone else. And that is hard for me too, because if I were to have more self-compassion and self-care, then I would probably reach out for help more. But so what do you think yours, I guess my question is, what do you think yours is rooted in when I say mine is rooted in anxiety?
Well, okay, so we're looking at your vulnerability versus mine, right? Mm-hmm. Your vulnerability is your second guessing of being able to accomplish things and finding that value there. Right? Like I don't question that about me. That's not a vulnerability. If I need to do something, I find a way to do it and I don't care. I find a way.
I find a way too, but I doubt myself on that way.
I don't doubt. I don't
Okay.
I don't doubt at all.
Okay. So
for me, it's my emotions. That's my crux, right? Like I know I keep going back to it, but that's the only example I have because that is the weakest part of who I am as a human being.
It's also wait a minute. It's also the strongest part of who you are as a human being. It's your light and your dark. So
it's both, right? But that is your anxiety is my emotions, my feels, right? Like when I get trapped in my feels or trapped in my emotions. Okay. So that's how it is for me. It's the same exact concept.
They sort of do overlap, but they're also very different.
Yes. But it's the same concept, right? It's the exact same concept.
Getting stuck in it and stuck in the vacuum. That's what I call it.
The vacuum, outer space, wherever you want to call it, right? Like because you're in this point and you're in this place where nothing makes sense anymore, and you're questioning every detail, every decision, you break it down, overanalyze, start tearing it apart and to shreds, right? So it's so self-defeating, and that's
when I'm stuck in it, it's so hard to get out of, and then I feel shame afterwards. After I'm out of it, I feel shame, and I'm like, "What's wrong with you? Like you do every single thing you put your mind to. Like this is fact. Everything that I want to do, I do. I put my mind to it, and I figure it out, and I do it, and I accomplish my goals. That has never been an issue. I'm not lazy. So I know all of this. I know these facts. So why am I not able to, when I'm in it, say, hold on, it's anxiety. It takes over. It's that anxious vacuum that takes over and tells me that I can't do it.
And that's the same thing for me.
All those feelings that make you feel like you're shit.
Right, but I also get anxious about it, right? Because then I get anxious, then I get self-deprecating, then I get it has those stages, right? And I go through all of them the same way. I just do it with my emotions. You do it in other areas, I should say.
I think that there's a thread here. I always try to find the thread. So
no, not you.
I think the thread is patience. and of which neither of us have patience. And I think that that's so important, that when you feel and you have those feels, like you said, you want to immediately have a solution and an answer and not feel those feelings. And
Yes.
and feeling through those, just like when I have that anxiety and I have those thoughts and I lack self-compassion, I need to step back and say, it's okay that I feel this way right now. This is how you get, like, that's a trigger. This is, speak to myself. This is how I get. And I always come out of it. And I always accomplish my goals. Just like you have those feelings and you always get it done. And you always end up back to zero, where whether you have self-worth or not, you still get your shit done, right? So we know that we're two people that get our stuff done, and we can do it. So why can't we have the same self-talk about, having some patience in regard to all of this? Where's that fall?
Okay, so first of all, we're both very impulsive, so we can't ignore that fact, right? We want
I don't
that.
know. I think you might be more impulsive than I.
Probably.
I'm working too hard on that.
I definitely, right? I want that instant gratification. I want some type of, for me, a lot of it stems around unknowns. I'm not good with unknowns. I have this deep rooted fear of unknowns.
It's scary.
Right. And I'd rather hear the wrong answer than hear no answer. So in a way, that's where self-sabotage kicks in. And I almost forced the wrong answer, right?
Because that's an important point.
I get so fixated. I'd
rather have the wrong answer than no answer. And that's so key, because it's like I almost would rather beat myself up about not being able to do something than take a minute, step back, and say, you know what, I don't have to know the answer right this second. So the common thread is actually is the patience to get to the right answer.
Well, I mean, it's one of your favorite things, right? Just be. Like, it's the hardest thing in the world to do. It really is, and we talked about it last night, right, on Gabe's show, as much as we were allowed. But it was one of those things, and we went into that, and just being is one of the hardest things to do. It's not a natural feeling, right? We always want to.
Not for us. Not for us. I mean, I don't know if it is for. I think it's for very evolved people. They can just sort of be in the moment all the time.
But I think they train themselves to get there. I think that it takes work to be there. I don't think you're born and at 3 years old you're just being, right? Like,
no, but there's different chemical makeups of people that make it a little bit harder for some than others. Definitely.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
impulsivity is a chemical imbalance too. Impulsivity can be caused by a chemical imbalance. So, it's definitely easier for some people than others, but all of this takes work, and I think it's important to note that. Because we can say whatever we want on our shows, and but again, like living and acting in the space that we're talking about is sometimes really, really, really hard. So I think we need to sort of come back to zero. And I just had it just now on the phone with you before we got on. Like I was trying to figure something out, and I got so frustrated. And with me, you were so able to be like, Annie, like, you don't need to figure this out right this second. But with yourself, you would have wanted to know that answer right that second. You would have shot off the email, you would have shot off the message, you would have shot off whatever, you would have asked whomever, you would have said, and I'm like, chill, like, you know what I mean? It's so interesting how we can't do it with ourselves.
Well, and 14 hours ago, I did it, right? So it's a work in progress, and it's not perfect. This is something that really needs. Yourself. It is, and it's seeing your own triggers and patterns, right? And I it's so hard to do sometimes, because when you're stuck in that moment, the last thing you want to do is look at it, right?
Yeah, and the answer.
Right, and you just want to push and push and push, and it's almost becomes this obsession to where I don't want to do this now anymore because I'm not hearing what I want to hear. So I'm going to find a way just to kill this idea.
And that's a
right?
tantrum. So that's a tantrum that you have when you self-sabotage. It's like a self
Yeah,
tantrum.
it is, and it's not healthy and it's not great. But luckily, we're starting to learn that we need to work through that, right?
So here's the key, right? We just worked around everything that comes back to our main topic. And that's having self-compassion around what we're both and many people are going through when they feel
Yes.
this way.
Yeah.
So to get to a place, I think it might be more possible to get to a place of having some self-compassion and self-love and self-care than it is to become this patient person. Like, I think it might be easier, to just sort of say, okay, I'm actually feeling really impatient right now. I want the answer right this second. Like, that's okay. That's how I am sometimes. And it's okay to be that way, and sort of coddle yourself the way that I would say to you or someone,
Hmm.
like, it's okay. I understand. That's frustrating that you can't find that answer right now. That's really frustrating.
Right.
Why don't you say to yourself, you get it. You really want it right now. You want that answer and you can't get it. You have to have some
Right.
patience around that. So having that inner voice be the same voice that we would say to each other or to someone that we love, like having that voice of just coming back to zero, and just, it doesn't have to be right that second, I guess.
It's not that simple, right? And we can't fool
I'm
ourselves and say
trying
it
to
is.
simplify it.
I know, but it's not, right? We're living human beings that live in a very complicated world, right? This isn't like we wake up and it's all roses and sunshine, and we get the best coffee in the morning and life is great and there's no stress and there's no pandemics and we can travel wherever we want, we can do
Right.
whatever we
That's,
want.
you're describing my life, but everyone else has it pretty tough.
Yeah. I mean, but that's, this is the real world, right? And even the people that have it the best are having a hard time right now.
All right. So can we, I'm going to get really real. Okay.
Oh
And I'm
boy.
going to expose, oh wait,
Oh
I'm going to
boy.
expose, no, not you. I'm going to expose myself and say, and for the betterment of other people and to help heal others and to help them understand that I go through the same thing, I'm going to give the example that I just went through. Okay. And will you walk through with me sort of reaction to what I,
No.
okay. So my example, like an hour ago, was that all day it's been weighing on me, and I've been thinking that I want to possibly go back to school and get my master's in, I'm looking at, organizational psychology right now. Okay. So as we all know, I just finished my executive MBA program, which was the last time I ever wanted to be in school, ever. Like I can't even believe I'm saying the word school right now. But in my story that I'm living and that I'm creating, it may very well add a shit ton to my credentials and my background in what I want to do in Annietude LLC and do in my business. So
Right.
without getting into all of those details, we understand that there's an option here that I might.
Okay, but pause for 1 second. It also could be your passion driven purpose. So let's not overlook that as well. It's not as much about your company. It's not about as much, I'm going to make all this money. It's not as much about any of those things.
Mm-mm.
This has the potential to be your passion driven purpose.
You're right. That's a great point.
And that's a different level, because then there's a higher level of pressure, because now you're questioning, is it really a passion? Is this something that I really want to do? Or am I being impulsive? Because that's what we do, right? So then you're second guessing the impulsive behavior. You're second guessing, I just got done with school, I don't want to go back to school. Then you're second guess, the list goes on. There's so much second guessing because we're used to doing that, right? Like, we have these deep rooted insecurities that we've been working on, and we find ways to second guess ourselves and relate non-related issues to relatable circumstances, which today was.
So explain this to me. So this is where I am. Okay. I don't have the feeling at all that I can't do it. I don't have that feeling. Like, remember
No.
when you were just saying before you don't
Right.
get that? I don't feel I can't do it. I feel like
Right.
where there's a will, there's a way, and I can manage it and figure it out and do it. I want the detail. Talk about impulsivity. I want
Right.
the details. I want to know which program. I want to know the day that it starts. I'm dead friggin' serious. I want to know
I
the day that
remember.
it starts.
I remember.
I want to know my financial aid status. I want to know which exact program, how long it's going to be, and then what I'm going to do with my business in the meantime to parlay everything together at the end. Like, I want that on a map right in front of me right now.
All right. So pause for a second.
Okay.
For anyone who's never filled out a FAFSA, this is where fixation kicks in. FAFSA. Okay. It's an hour-long process.
I did the FAFSA. That's done.
Right. But that's what I'm saying. Your fixation took over to the point where you wanted to know so badly.
Yeah.
That you did that. You took time out of your day today because it had to be done.
It had to be. Oh yeah. It had to be done today because I know that the FAFSA isn't that. It's a little annoying, but I know that stuff gets pulled in from your IRS records, and I know I've done it. I just went through it.
I know.
So I know what's hard and what's easy. And I would have paid any amount. I would have maybe given like a toe, maybe not my toes. I like my toes, but I would have given something very serious, like Evie on a bad day, right? I would have given away something very important to me for you to be like, Annie, this is the program. This is the best one for you to do. It starts on this date. This is what it's called, and this is what you'd be getting your master's in, and then you'd finish on this date, and that's and then also you fill out your FAFSA, and here's your financial aid information, and this is what you're going to owe, and then you'll consolidate your loans at the end, and you'll be all good to go. Like, I would have given you an arm for you to have that answer today because I wanted to know it today.
Right.
And then when so I don't feel I can't do it at all. What I feel is I want to do it, and I want to start tonight.
Right. I know. and the best part is you didn't even know which program you wanted to do, right? That's the whole other issue. So you're at the point where you got so fixated on it, and it was just building this anxiety up in you, and it turned into almost, I don't want to do it anymore because it's just becoming an issue, right?
There was a quick thought of like, you know what, you're an idiot. What are you doing? Like, why are you even?
So
you just got done a master's in business. Like, why are you even considering this? This is ridiculous. Silly.
So the first thing I told you, which I am yet to tell myself in anything I ever need to, right, it is, first of all, take a step back and breathe, right? Like, slow yourself down. and you're looking
my
at
biggest message to everyone: take a minute,
right,
back to the breath,
and you're creating opportunity, and look at it as opportunities, and it's
you made an amazing point. Wait, say that from the beginning. What you said earlier.
Take a second and breathe.
No, about how instead of looking at it from the lens of this is what I have to do to check the boxes,
right,
and get to the right program, and look at it as opportunity and an exciting, what you said to me exactly was that got me to calm down was, this is an incredible thing that you have in front of you. Don't take it and make it an anxiety ball. Look at it as incredible opportunity to explore these options, even.
Right.
Not to necessarily have the exact answer, but to actually explore these options.
At 8 p.m. on a Friday night during COVID. Yes.
Listen, I never said that my timing is perfect on anything, but I will tell you that when I decide on something, I am fierce. I mean, I don't take that away from myself at all. I am fierce when I make a decision. Go ahead.
And in the time that we're on the phone, you went through 3 different universities. You found all different programs, all different timelines. You're looking at class schedules. You're looking at start dates. And
I realize that I'm insane. I realize that, but that's part of what makes my fire my fire. Right?
And I'm not judging, right? Because you're so fixated on having an answer. Not that you're not looking for the right solution or the right opportunity. You're looking for a answer. Just like you spoke about in the interview from Wednesday, the email that you received the other day. It's the same exact
I
concept.
wanted an answer.
And you started creating good and bad narratives within a 3-minute conversation with me. It went from, well, you don't sound right, so you must think this is bad. And I said, I didn't say a word, so
Yeah.
I must not sound right, but I don't know.
Yeah.
But this is what we do. But this is what we do.
Go back to the beginning. So then if this is what I do, I need to have some understanding around the fact that this is what I do, instead of trying to be different than I am. So having some self-compassion around, okay, this is how I get. I always get like this. I get anxious. I want to know the answer right away. But the truth of the matter is, I have to take a step back. How would I treat a friend? And then treat myself like a friend.
It's more than that. And I'm gonna explain a second, right? There's triggers that put you on this spiral. And it's not a down or an up spiral. It's just a spiral because that's the thought process, right? ADHD kicks in and just runs with it, right? So one way or the other, you're hitting that tunnel vision, okay? And that tunnel vision is creating this, I need a solution because all I see is that I'm fixated on this right now. And so I think what you need to do is you need to feel that tunnel vision starting. Right. And that's what I'm starting to notice now is that when it starts, there is a trigger for it to start. There is a trigger where it kicks in. There's a trigger that really flips it into high gear. And it's not easy to identify, and it's not always identifiable. But, you know, like earlier today, something triggered me and I started doing a spiral. Again, I listened to you, and the first thing I said was stop, right? I just literally said stop. Again, it's easier to tell me what to do than listen, right? So I said stop, and I started looking at what my reason behind it was. Like, what exactly triggered me? And it went back to my insecurities, and it went back to the unknown, right? Mm-hmm. It all goes back to that unknown feeling that I'm so uncomfortable with. Mm-hmm. I'm very good at it with starting businesses. I'm very good at it at creating things out of nothing, right? I'm very good at it bringing people together. I'm very good at those things. But when it comes to personal, it's my weakest part of me right now, right? It's my strongest and weakest, right? Because I'm such an empath. I'm so emotionally there for everyone else. I'm so supportive. I'm so loving. I have unconditional love, right? And I do all these things so well, but I'm not good at it with myself at all. And
I think that's pretty common. I think that this is pretty common with most people. I think that not everybody, like you said, this is work to have something and an understanding for where the triggers lie. And I think that, you know, but the more we talk about it, first of all, the more that the audience can not feel alone and can feel like, okay, it's not just me. Because even when you're telling me, I'm like, okay, it's not just me. Even though I already know.
So when we're out here live, bearing our souls to the world, we're helping others. Okay, great.
Exactly. I've made fun of myself and put myself out there so much in the last few days. I mean, yesterday we talked about on 2 different shows, or 2 different times we were on Zooms.
Yeah.
We were talking about my email problem and how it was making you twitch that I have 62,000 unread emails. And when it comes down to it, that does say something about me. It's not lack of organization, because I am very organized in certain ways. There's some sort of psychological element that is
61762, by the way.
Thank you.
You're at least the first time you showed the screen.
You're such a savant. Yeah. So, well, today it's more. I can tell you that much.
I would assume.
I'm going to tell you right now how many it is.
I mean, at the end of the day, the good news is we're identifying these things, right? The good news is we're seeing the pieces, and we're sharing them in public, right, for the world to see, because we know that they'll help someone else. And even by doing this is therapeutic for us, because one, we do it together, because if we were doing this by ourselves, we'd probably lose our mind, right?
Well, I would be having I do have conversations with myself, so that
I understand.
Scare people.
I do too, but You know, I feel like because we're in this together and because we're supporting each other and helping each other through this, it's almost in an entertaining way that we can laugh at ourselves about it, and it makes it easier for us to grow and evolve from it because it's we're not putting ourselves down. We're actually identifying how silly it is, right? How obsessive and silly.
How silly, but at the same time, how important and how crucial, how critical of a part of us this is, and a part of people that, it might. I don't want to belittle it and call it silly. I know what you're saying, that it sounds silly and it makes you laugh. Like you're like, what are you doing? What are you talking about? But I want to make sure that it's known that this is very, I don't want to say serious, but it's very common, and it makes sense, right? Because what it's rooted in makes sense. It's rooted in the lack of self-worth, which it always comes back to. Just, at the end of telling our stories, it is all rooted in lack of self-worth. And the way to make it better is self-compassion and an understanding of ourselves, that we are human and we do have anxieties and fears and fears of the unknown and scary parts of ourselves that, where we get carried away. And I do this, like, why am I like this, that narrative? Why am I like this? Like, why can't I just take things as they come, and just, I'm not really sure what school I want to go to, and I don't really know the program yet. Like, why am I not like that? And it bothers me that I'm not. And then I come back to having that compassion because I'm teaching myself how to have it. And I say, it's okay, because that's not how Annie is. And that's okay.
Again, I mean, just being, right? Just being ourselves at that moment. And it really goes back to that. Even the self-compassion part goes back to just being, because just being, you're accepting it, and you're giving yourself love by just allowing yourself to be in that present moment, no matter what is going on, right? So it's one of those things.
It's really hard. It's really hard.
It's beyond hard. I mean, it is, for me and the type of person I am, it is the hardest thing in the world to do right this second. But
to stop and be.
Yeah.
Saying.
But I'm working on it, right? And this is something that over time will evolve and get easier. It's not perfect. It's not easy. It's practice. And that's really what it is. And again, that goes back to patience. So that goes back to what you said earlier, because we need to have patience with ourselves, to give ourselves the time to be able to do so. And neither of us are very good at that. Like when I said to you, it's Friday night, you might not hear till Monday, you were so relieved and excited when you got the generic email that said, oh, we're going to get you more information. And it was literally a generic email as soon as you requested information.
Yeah, well, right. Well, Mike, this is what you don't get. Like, I already, during that time when we got off the phone and I went and got ready, like, I already wrote my statement of purpose and intent, which was a page letter. That's, by the way, very well written. I filled out the entire application.
I agree.
I mean, I uploaded all of my information, not my transcript yet, which I was just sort of feeling anxious that it's on my other computer. But like, you're
ready to drive home right now. Like
right. And there's part of that. Like, let's look at the light side of how we are, though, too, because I want to say that I think that one thing I do know about myself is that is part of what makes me, both in a darkness and a light way. So there's also no one, I'm going to say this, and it's going to sound not humble, but I'm going to be just really raw right now. There's nobody you want on your side that can get shit done more than I. Like, you want to get it done. You want to find out the answer. You want to get to the bottom of it. You want to like figure out which thing, where to go, how to do it. Come to me. So there is that impulsivity piece, but then there's also the piece of, well, she really knows what she wants and goes for it and gets it done.
Okay. So in my mind, right, it's taking an unhealthy way of doing things and using it as a positive. And I mean that in the nicest way, because I do the same thing, right? My ADHD is what creates that tunnel and what also, puts me in
Totally
those
disagree.
spirals.
I totally disagree because I'm not saying that it's okay. I'm not saying it's right. What I'm saying is I'm having understanding around who I am and an acceptance of who I am. It's not, oh, I'm letting myself off the hook. I understand the impulsivity. I understand the craziness of it. But I'm also saying, okay, but it's like saying somebody that's really, what do I always say? When somebody's really stubborn, okay, they're also probably like have a lot of perseverance and tenacity. Okay. So that's what I'm doing. I'm seeing the light and with that dark piece, if that makes
Well,
sense.
okay, so I mean, if I was to do that to what I do, my fixations and
Yeah.
my attention to detail, right? Because that's what gets me in a lot of trouble, right? Like I see things that most people would never see.
Right.
Like I don't miss a detail. Like it is ridiculous what my mind picks up. I can watch
It's a
anything
blessing
and
and a curse.
it is, right? Because then when I hit a spiral, I'm picking up minute details and spinning them in my head to all different things, right?
So many
And
scenarios.
right, and because my mind plays those scenario games, I need to know how to balance those scenarios. And sometimes they're good, sometimes there are a lot of times they're still bad, but now at least I'm learning to stop them, right? And I'm learning to adjust them and balance them. It's my fixation on details has always gotten me in a bad way because I can pick out the details that nobody else notices, and I get hooked on them to the point where I find um I find holes or I find gaps, right? So if we take that to a positive, when I look at businesses or I looked at what people are building and I look at how people are creating, or if I look at potential, podcast guests for anybody, right? Or I'm looking at somebody who's creating something great and I want to help them the best way I can. I pick apart those finite details and I give them an added edge because I pick up things that nobody else would notice, right?
So then
And
what if I said right now, I'm saying this in the nicest way, but you're just making an excuse and turning something negative into something positive? That's so not true. You just showed me both sides, the light and the dark.
yes, and I
There's
did that to you, so that was really nice of me. Um,
what you did was you told me that I was making something positive out of something negative, and that's not true.
no,
I'm telling you the other side of the coin, just like you did.
right. Yeah, and I've never looked at it that way. To be honest with you, but I've never looked at myself that way, and that comes back to self-compassion again, right? Because I've always judged myself so harshly in everything I do because I'm my toughest critic. I expect the most out of myself, and I set myself up almost to fail in many ways because I have these lofty expectations of crazy things that don't even make sense because they're out of my control,
Right.
right? And I try to, when I fixate on things, when I spin things, when I do this, when I do that, like it takes it to another level, good or bad, just like your tenacity, getting things done, everything else, right? So somebody comes to me and says, I need this type of person or this type of situation or this type of strategic partner. I'm going to go finite details and find the most unlikely partner in the world that it makes the most sense for a mutually beneficial relationship for both sides.
That other people might not see.
Exactly. And
Right.
and that's where the
So that's where you have to find your compassion around that.
right.
Like I have to find that with my own stuff, like of wait a minute, there's a reason that you've achieved every single thing that you've ever tried to go for the most part. Like you're my goals. Like because I do everything to the nth degree. And that's a positive as well as, sometimes I could take it down a notch. And so same thing with you. Like, your mind goes crazy and you're all in your feels and emotions, but yet you're so highly attuned to people that you can see things that others can't. So it's understanding that about ourselves, I think. And that understanding is the whole thread here, which is the self-compassion piece. Does that make sense?
Yes, it all goes back to that self-compassion, which then goes back to self-worth and valuing ourselves and everything else. So I feel like as we're on this journey, right, and creating our self-worth across many different ways, not only just one way, we're going to then in turn make it easier to be self-compassionate, to, have self-compassion. So I feel over time it's going to get a little easier for us. Plus, it becomes repetitious, becomes a pattern, becomes our new routine, and we
Right.
break the old cycle. But it all goes back to finding those triggers, right? Because if we're not finding those triggers and catching it in its early stage, then it's going to turn into what it did for me this morning or what it did for you this afternoon. Same
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Because that's where we need to, I think that's where the self-compassion kicks in, is stopping it before it gets out of control.
Sure. So awareness, recognizing where it's beginning, recognizing the roots of it.
Yes.
Are super important. So I think if I were to think about my school situation, the root of it is, again, you said it before, the unknown. And the root of it is I want to know.
Right.
And I want to know my plan right now so that I can get on board and go for it, because that's who I am. And it's like, I need to go back to just hold on a second. You don't need to know right this second. You don't need to know right this second. Soon would be good, but right this second is not going to probably do anything. It's Friday night. So, I have a little time to do research this weekend. So I need to just breathe. So coming back to but also understanding that, you know what, there's part of that's excitement. I got excited. Yeah. Right. So,
and that's okay. And that's okay. It's okay to get excited. It's okay to get ahead of yourself a little. It's okay to let those things flow and be happy, right? And go to that next level. But it's not okay when it turns into that negative slant around something that could be that. And that's where we both do that, to where that anxiousness, that unsureness, that it goes from, we take it from being happy to hitting the gas pedal and going from a 0 to 100 in 32 seconds, and expecting that end result immediately. And that's where I think we need to catch ourselves, right? Because we already destroyed the happiness. We took away the joy for ourselves.
Right. And that's the self-sabotage piece.
Right. Oh, without a doubt.
We don't even realize, like, there's just no reason to do that. There's no reason. It's all a domino effect. And if we can get to the root and say, okay, here's when I start to do that. Here's when it all kicks in. And then have compassion around that and just say, you're actually worth taking a step back. You're actually worth it. And you can do whatever it is you want to do, but it doesn't have to be right this second, and come back to our breath, right?
Without a doubt. I mean, it's like you wrote, what was that, yesterday? Was that last night? Was that this morning? I don't even know anymore.
I don't remember.
I think it was last night. It was
yesterday, yeah, that I wrote about coming back, like moving and letting go. And that was in the moment. That was real. That was every bit, and I posted it on LinkedIn as an article. And I just felt like all of this weight was right here, and it just started to float up and lift off me.
And what's funny is last night was more about a situation that you had zero control over.
Zero control.
Absolutely zero control.
Yeah.
So that's completely the unknown. Completely the unknown. It goes directly back to the unknown.
And that's scary. Unknowns are scary.
And what's funny is a week ago, I had the same unknown that freaked me out.
So what is that fear of the unknown? What is that fear? Why is that so great? So
okay. So
force.
So this is okay. So this is again tying every piece of this conversation right back to it all again. It goes back to the self-compassion, which then falls back to self-worth, and having faith and belief in ourselves and our purpose, that it doesn't matter what we can't control in the unknown, because we're going to be fine either way.
Right.
And that's where that triggers us, because since we are building our self-worth and it's not where we would like it to be, that in turn takes it to the next level, to where we go into those anxiety, anxious, spirals, whatever you want to call it. For me, it's always just been a spiral, right? I've always just seen either a funnel down the drain or up the drain. It's just always just in my mind how I associate it.
Yeah. So, but my question was, what is it rooted in from like childhood? Like, is it just chaos that we wanted to become? Or is it, why is the fear so great of the unknown when we both are smart enough to know that everything's going to be okay? It always has been, and it will be again. And so what is it rooted in?
Insecurities. It goes back to insecurities. It 100% deeply goes back to deep-rooted insecurities that we're both working on. I mean, that's where it really, because those insecurities,
Abandonment and things of that nature.
yeah, I mean, I think that's all part of it, right? And the insecurities then feed off each other, and they turn into all different masks and different ways of coming across, right? And it's just that unknown and just not having that level of acceptance or ability to whatever. It's just that whole level.
And just having to let go.
100%.
That ability to control, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that piece, and that does stem from us when we were younger. I think, at least for me, it definitely does.
100%.
So much stuff out of my control and trying to keep things in order. And when I can today put things in order, I feel less anxious. So,
but in reality, how much do we really control? I mean, we can control our reactions. We can't control anything else. That our control stems to our reactions. It does not go to any other outside thing. It's all how we react to it, and that then goes back to self-compassion. That goes back to self-worth. That goes back to insecurities and everything else. So I feel like all those things. Kenny's the best. He's awesome.
Such a good guy.
I feel like it's all those different things, right? And as we're evolving, once we hit a point, it will just be easier.
I mean, I'm evolving. I'm evolving every day. Right. So I guess it's getting a little bit easier. Some days are harder than others, but being aware, I think, is so important, to try to go back to that awareness piece of the triggers of what makes it happen, and causes. We're getting some comments that there's a disagreeer and you control a lot. What does that mean? That you control a lot? What does that mean?
No, we only control how we react to circumstances, situations, and other things. I mean, we control our reactions. That's it. There is nothing.
Our actions.
Yeah, our actions and reactions. That's it. There is no other control. Everything else is out of our control. It's one of those things, right? Like, just because you have a trigger doesn't mean that you can't acknowledge it and control how you react to it.
Well, that's what I was trying to say in my article, was like, okay, this is what's happening. This is how I'm feeling. Observe it, be aware of it, observe it, and let it go.
And that's it. It doesn't have to it's not easy, but truth of the matter is, once you know it's there, it's easier. And once you know it's there, and once you accept it for what it is, it doesn't have to impact you anymore. It just, like you say, you feel it and let it flow through you, almost to the point of ignoring it, but allowing it.
Right. And you can't ignore things. I think observing them is important, like almost give them a seat at the table, but it doesn't mean you have to serve them dinner,
Right. No, definitely. I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, we have a habit of allowing things to come into our lives, allowing things to be in our lives, that whether they're good for us or not, we make those same.
If you pay your bills on time, you won't get late notices and create anxiety. Right. So you're controlling your action, which is to pay the bill on time. Right?
That's not even relevant.
No,
But I mean, but you're controlling your action and reaction. That's all you're doing.
yeah,
It's that simple, right? You can reply to anything, right? So I don't think it matters. I don't think it matters what the circumstance is. You can either control your action and reaction and action.
I agree.
Other than that, there's nothing else that we control. If our bill comes in and it's double what we wanted it to be, we can't control that. We can control how we react to it. We can either get upset about it, flip out, freak out, call the company, scream our brains out.
Right, but we can't control when the bill, just as this example,
Right, when the bill is due.
is due. Right.
Right.
That's the key, is that we can't control that. We can only control our action. So that makes total sense, Mike. I'm with you. So I think that, you know, developing that ability around just sort of an understanding for our triggers. And if we can do that, then we can go from there, right? Doesn't that make sense? Like sort of just a way of just sort of being in it and feeling the feelings and then saying, okay, I feel them. Okay, this is what I feel. This is the emotion I'm having. And I'm not going to change myself right now. So I'm just going to be.
It's acknowledging, accepting, having self-compassion to the point where you allow it to be what it is, and then you just let it go. Because at the end of the day, your trigger, you have no control over your triggers either. You can control how you react to your triggers.
Right.
And you can accept them, and you can allow them to flow. You can allow them to happen without triggering you, right? And you can practice that. But you don't have a control over it being a trigger, because that trigger is usually something outside of you, right? So you just got to be.
Or
again,
you could be doing something to cause that trigger, but you don't have control over the trigger.
Right. Exactly.
That makes sense. I'm just like piecing it all together, but it makes total sense to me. So we're like toward the end of the show. It's like 10:51. Talk to me about how you want to wrap this up. What do you have to say? What have you learned tonight?
I mean, I learn something every night. I mean, you know, I learn every day. I mean, I'm always learning from you. I'm learning from myself. I'm learning from many people. I mean, you're someone who inspires me momentarily. Like anytime I have an interaction with you, you inspire me and that motivate me and I learn, right? You're just that special person, right? So you're just somebody that has that impact on me, and you're somebody that, you know, sees me for who I am, right? And I have a tremendous amount of respect and everything for you. And
thank you.
You know, it's what I've learned tonight is, you know, that just being open with these things, having these real conversations, it's okay to have an issue. It's okay to have a problem, as long as you can be aware of it and address it without getting obsessed about it, right? Because that's where the self-compassion comes in, because rather than turning it into an obsession, rather than turning it into a circumstance or a situation, you allow it to just be, and you accept it for what it is, and you let it bounce off you.
And have compassion around your feelings and your emotions, because we all have them, and it's normal, and it's okay to have them. You don't have to beat yourself up for having them. It's coming back to your worth. You're actually, if you think about it, Mike, you're worth having your emotions and your feelings. You're worth that. You're worthy of those feelings and emotions. You count enough. Those are okay.
It's not the having them that's the issue. It's the obsessing and then going into the spiral that's the problem.
Yeah.
So you're allowed to start getting anxious. But also when you get anxious, that should trigger you to stop that process, take a step back, breathe, and allow it to flow.
Right. It's very difficult. I do like that. I like that methodology.
But that's when you allow yourself happiness and stop the self-sabotage, right? Because the minute that you can stop allowing that trigger to control you, you now have a control over your reaction, and you're able to allow it to be that happy situation without affecting you.
Right. Or on the same token, you can allow it to not be a happy situation and just allow your feelings, and it's all okay. just allowing, having compassion around your feelings, right? It all goes back to the same thing.
Oh, Kenny, we love you too.
We love you, Kenny. I can't get his comment off. Oh, there. So I think that that's a really nice way to wrap it up. Just sort of, I feel more peaceful in talking about this. I feel like I've reached a point where at least I'm aware of what I need to do. I'm more aware of just talking it through in the situations and everything. Do you feel that way?
100%. I mean, being aware is the first step, right? Acknowledging that it's an issue is a win. Identifying how to address the issue is step 2, and then taking the action is step 3. Because it's action over words, right? And I've had those issues and I've had those problems, and my mind gets so jumbled sometimes that just because my intent is pure without malintent doesn't mean that I'm putting the action behind the words also. So I feel like the words without actions become empty, but at the same time, identifying how to turn it into action and being willing to do so is the biggest difference it can be.
Right. And having self-compassion around those feelings toward the action too, just an understanding of yourself and sort of like how you would accept and treat a friend, I think is super important as well.
Yes.
So
it depends on the friend.
That's true. You have to pick a really, really good friend.
Yes.
But that brings us to the end of our show. I'm so glad that we talked about this tonight, Mike. Your insight is the best always. And it's so important to me and special to me. And I appreciate you very much. And thank you for coming on and having our conversations together.
Always.
And I look forward to next week.
As do I. And we have Monday too. We have Monday, Thursday, and that.
Monday for our roundtable. Then we
have Monday. Then you have Tuesday, which is Caitlin.
It's a crazy week.
And then Thursday we have Gabe, and then Friday back here. Yeah.
Okay, so that's a week of Annietude. So I have to go into this with some good tude.
Well, there's definitely worse ways to live.
Yes, it's true.
Yes.
Thank you. So we will reconvene, and I will see you to co-host that great roundtable on systemic racism on Monday, and then the rest will follow.
Sounds good.
Oh, and if you want to learn more about me, just go to annieleib.com. It's ANNIELEIB.com. Please like and subscribe to our podcast.
Yes. Awesome.
Yes. All right. I will see you soon.
All right.
All right. Good night, everyone. Peace.
Bye.